Hi, welcome back. I'm sorry I've tried ringing them again and had no luck. We'll just move as fast as we can and it will be fine somehow. Come on. Now it's not going to work for me. Why is that? Let's move that out of the way. That there. All right, these are the texts. Some of you will have bought them. They are available online through the library. Unfortunately, the library has some weird, you can only borrow them for 7 days kind of thing, which will just reinforce your feelings of inadequacy when you've got them on 7-day loan and you haven't looked at them over that 7 days. Maybe that's what they're trying for. I don't know. I'm kind of trying to work on that to the extent that I can, but I haven't had much success. Yeah, they are expensive, I get that, and they do make your life easier if you've got them, and they are the same texts that will be used in advance. If you don't have the 5th edition or the 13th edition, I think it is, where is it? That's 13th. Couple editions ago, they'll be very similar. Where you will find more problems will actually be in advanced, where there'll be some minor differences then. So if you're strategic about it and you've got earlier editions, you might find as you work out, you know, the bit at the beginning when you do advanced, you'll work out which chapters you can print and all the rest of it. There are many Australian contract law books. Contracts, I mean, it's awesome, but it doesn't change a lot. So sometimes you might find that you actually benefit from using Graw or Cheshire and 5 Foot or the Australian Butterworth contract law, which is also online, by the way. Any of these topics, you can go into the databases like Hallsbury's Law of Australia, or just, I think it's called the Laws of Australia is one of the other databases, and go to the contract chapter and just sort of work through the topics, and you will find through that. It's just you're going to have to do more legwork if you don't buy the textbooks, okay? So if you think that you might be a person who might just possibly be easily swayed by Netflix or a couple of beers on a hot night like this one, as opposed to going through the databases and working out what the reading would be if you didn't have the textbook, I'd suggest you buy the textbook if you can afford it. We talked about part B, I'm not going to worry about it, and there are some ideas here for some helpful stuff. One of the things I would strongly recommend that you do, particularly once we get into the substance stuff, is make notes really quickly after class. Think about it. I tend to think about it in these 3 ways, and I will continually ask you to do this. What frustrated you or challenged you? What did you find interesting that you want to learn more about? And what did you find actually made you feel comfortable? Like, I think it's also not only good to highlight the things where you need to do more work, but occasionally to tell yourself, actually, yeah, I understood that, I felt good about it. There might be more of that towards the second half of the semester than the beginning, but see how we go. I mean, like some of this I've said. Good way to work this out, particularly if you've got a buddy. Sometimes your buddy might be your dog or your neighbour's dog, but actually have a go at explaining, particularly the things that challenged you, to somebody else, because that is one of the best ways of isolating where your real issues or problems are, and working from there, that, you know, chewy stuff around learning. So yeah, reflect on what you do, get involved in the discussion, and see what you recognise in the wild. Look for contracts. Look for, as you transact or interact with people, look and think about, well, what does this mean? And keep asking yourself why. That's one of the best things that you can do when you're reading, because do not expect to get it the first time you read something. Read it, we talk about it in the classroom, hopefully it'll make more sense. If it makes more sense when you just read it, awesome. But my guess is there will be things in there that don't make sense. So continually ask yourself why. Why this case? Why is this an issue? Why is this important? Why has this been included? all of you are basically at first year stage or should be. One of the things I would strongly recommend is getting together some kind of system for keeping together your notes and your resources. People who go to RMIT have access to some software for free called EndNote, which is academic referencing software for gathering information. It is not immediately easy to use. The library run courses in how to use it. If you were in your 5th year and you hadn't heard of it, I would say don't bother. But because you're at the beginning and it's an investment, there is a learning investment in doing it, but it will help you gather that information, keep it. Because we're law and because we now use beautiful AGLC 4, and I will say 3 because 4 just came in, and it is a law unto itself. You know, it's there for legal academics and pretty much nobody else uses it. So you actually have to download a particular library and settings in EndNote and set it up properly. But it's impossible for me to give you marks on certain criteria in the assessment if you do not reference. Well, it's really impossible for you to pass if you do not reference, because that's ultimately plagiarism or a complete lack of research, one or the other. So if you do not reference at all, pretty much you're stuffed. But you reference badly, well, not badly, but not in accordance with AGLC 4, and it's very difficult for me to give you marks in relation to your written work. So yeah, get a system. I'm a big fan of Evernote. Do people use that? OneNote is pretty good now too. I use Evernote as much as anything because I've been using it for a long time. It's a really great way of just putting an electronic bucket of things and then searching over the top of it later. OneNote is a great way of doing it too. I'm often suggesting electronic things because I like trees and I'm a bit of a geek. But bullet journaling is also, there's YouTube videos on how to do that. There's a Cornell note-taking system. Like, on the whole, it's a really good idea, particularly when you have open book exams, to pick a system and stick with it, because towards the end of the semester you are going to try and gather that information in a way that you can take your notes in a useful fashion into an exam. And so if you've got a colour coding system from the very beginning, then you don't have to be spending 10 minutes in an exam thinking, holy hell, what does purple mean? You know, it's better. Just, you know, set out the way you mean to continue. So, finally, let's get to some content. The objectives of this topic is, in a nutshell, to work out, well, why do we have contract laws at all? And to provide you with a kind of overview of the pedagogy that I will be using to teach this subject, and for you to start thinking about what contracts are in the wild. So, the learning framework looks something like this. We are going to start the first half of this semester looking just at the elements of a formation. How do we recognise when, under Australian law, a contract has been formed? You will be doing this in your sleep before you know it. The elements are agreement. That is basically made up of offer and acceptance, except for the times when we can't see them and there's an agreement anyway. We'll talk about that. That is basically topic 1. We're going to take 2 weeks to do topic 1. Next, consideration. For our purposes now, let's think of consideration as price. It's a lot more than that and a lot more complex than that. But for now, we need to see consideration in order for there to be a contract. We need certainty. We need to understand what the subject matter of the contract is. Certainty has 3 elements. I'm going to leave you hanging for those because I know you want to do the reading. And we need intention. So you are going to know those things off by heart very quickly, because unless we have all of those things, we do not have a legal agreement. They interact with each other. So you will find that we end up, as we talk about offer and acceptance, having to talk about each of the others to a certain extent. This is why we spend 2 weeks on offer and acceptance, and then we spend another 2 weeks talking about consideration. Intention and certainty then follow, but we can do them a lot quicker because a lot of overlap happens, but they are distinct elements. Then we will move on to talk about the matters that affect formation themselves. They break up into these three things: privity, formalities, and capacity. By the stage we're here, we will be doing 2 topics a week. Okay, so there is early on, we've got 1 topic over 2 weeks. Towards the second half of the semester, there are a number of weeks where we do 2 topics. There are actually 11 topics, and there are a number of weeks where we do at least 2 weeks where we do 2 topics a week. Topics are not evenly weighted. It's not like saying I've got $100 and I'm going to spend $20 one week and $40 the next week. They're not, they happen to have been broken up in topics in this logical way, but they don't neatly correspond with weeks. And I would be doing you a disservice if I tried to fit agreement into 1 week and also spread out intention over 2 weeks. Did you have a question? No? And then we're going to spend the last third of the semester talking about the terms of a contract themselves, how we recognise what the terms are, what the express terms are, and what terms are implied by statute, by law, by conduct, by a range of other things. So this bunch of matters basically is our subject. What's a contract? When is it formed? The other stuff you cover in advanced contract law. Looks like a lot more, but this is foundational stuff that will help you understand that. There are topics in here that we will cover off a little bit. We will talk a little bit about misrepresentation and unconscionability in the context of implied terms and the way that the competition and consumer law impacts contracts in Australia. We will also talk a little bit about this distinction between void and voidable contracts. And yeah, some of the other things we might graze over the top of, but on the whole, that's the law of contract on a page. This slide, one of the ones I first developed, I think I started teaching this subject in 2013, and so I haven't changed the slide since. It's not called Butterworth's anymore. I think it's now called the Laws of Australia, but I basically got this from one of the online databases. So again, all of these things link through to the subject matter. So again, strategies, if you're finding the text that you're reading dense and difficult, read what somebody else says about the topic. See if they're in your headspace better than this particular author. I'm not going to do that now. What am I doing here? Oh yeah, sorry, I thought I was going to introduce myself to you. I'm thinking, surely you've had enough of that now. So I'm going to skip over a couple of the activities because what I'm going to do is ask you to do them outside of the class. So, because we're too hot and I think that we just need to finish rather than sort of play with our computers. Complain if you need to later. So, contracts are an integral part of Australian society. The activity that I didn't ask you to do just then, because I didn't want to waste the time, is to ask you to think about what the most recent contract that you entered into. So I'm just going to ask you to do it verbally. Has anybody entered into a contract this year? Yeah, a few people. I just want to get the most recent one. Anybody entered into a contract this month? Couple, smaller number. Anybody entered into a contract today? What contract did you enter into today, Joel? Bought that bottle of water. Awesome. I don't know how the rest of you have been able to manage to get all the way through today without buying anything, much less this month. Okay, so contracts are ultimately an agreement between 2 people who intend to be bound by them, that agreement, that is enforceable by the Australian law. So there's a bit of a circular definition there, isn't there? It's a legal contract if the law will enforce it. There's a problem with the definition. And that's actually where your textbook starts. working out what a contract is. So we'll talk about some of these principles. So there's a variety of responses in the text. They include things like an agreement or a set of promises that the law will enforce. Circular, problematic. An agreement giving rise to obligations which are enforced by and recognised by law. Any promise which the law enforces on the basis that it's supported by consideration. So consideration, already we've got that word coming up. For now, I just want you to think about that as price. Any promise which the law enforces on the basis that it's made for a price. So each has problems with accuracy, but each helps us understand. And you will find a lot of this will just be, what is she going on about? Why does this matter? Aren't we just overcomplicating things? And then there will be a point, and I'm kind of a bit sad when I see it in some ways, where you start thinking like a lawyer, where you find yourself, like I was explaining before, completely appalled at the way somebody has spoken about a tragic human event, but understanding that they were speaking and thinking like a lawyer. So, you know, we do lose a little bit of our souls, sadly. So the way I think of it is like this, and I'm a bit of a storyteller, so bear with me. Many, many years ago now, my children, well, the one I'm thinking of at the moment is probably older than at least some of you in this room, and she, it was grade 3 Careers Day. She was so excited because I was going to come to school for Careers Day, and I got the slot nobody wants immediately after the fireman. Like, that just should be banned, right? You've got to make the fireman go last. And so in the end, this is how I explained what I did as a contract lawyer to a group of grade 3s in it was probably 2002, something like that. Imagine you're going to play a game. And in this context where we're talking about grown-ups, often, like, imagine a group of blokes have decided that they're going to play a game. Let's think about it maybe even as outdoor cricket, or, you know, cricket on the street. Are any of you old enough to remember playing cricket on the street? There's a rubbish bin at one end, and, you know, all the cars are around. Maybe if your parents were having drinks outside, somebody might have crossed cars on either side, or you'd pick the local court so you could stop things, and everything would have to be moved to the side when you play. That's one of the rules, right? And you'd sit there and you'd work out what the rules are at the beginning. And there'd be some pretty clear rules, you know. Over the fence is 6 and out. I've heard that, you know. You get 6, but you're out. If somebody goes into that cranky lady's yard, that'd be my yard these days, I live next to a school, then the person who hit it or threw it over the fence is the one who has to go and knock on the door to retrieve the ball. But, you know, day like today, imagine you're playing that game on day to day, you've got your set of rules, and just say it's about 5:30 or so, and someone's little brother who's never had a chance to hit that ball before goes out on the first go. Who cares? You let him have another go, right? But you get to 9 o'clock at night and it's twilight, and everybody's mum has been calling over the fence for the last 15 minutes that you will be in so much trouble if you do not come in now. Then over the fence will be 6 and out. Because that's what the rules do. The rules don't say this is how you have to do it every time. Well, they probably do say that, but the way that we actually interact with each other is, actually, while it's working, we'll probably do whatever it is that we can agree. But when it gets to the equivalent in commercial terms of twilight, and everybody's mum is getting cranky and you have to have a bath, that's when we need to take that contract out of the bottom drawer and say, this is how we're going to do it. So a large part of contract writing is preempting what kind of things might go wrong in a deal, what it is that people are going to do or not do, and being able to work out, well, what are the rules of engagement for that? I had bit of a debate over the weekend with a fairly well-known employment lawyer who was talking about writing and how he, as a litigator, the craft of writing was so important to what he did, and maybe wasn't the same for those transaction lawyers. Well, he knew how to get me het up, because writing is absolutely fundamental to what we do as lawyers, being able to get those rules right and right every time. And I pointed out to him, the people who are good at this, the litigators never see it, because actually we've already worked out what could go wrong, and the parties have actually agreed what's going to happen in those circumstances. Now, we can't always work out everything that will happen, but we can usually find some sort of methodology. So again, I hope that that helps in some way to get a feel for, well, what is it that contract lawyers do, and what is contract the noun? And I think this is another really important point. Contract or agreement, we can use them interchangeably at the moment. There is the noun and the verb. The noun is what I do. I write contracts. I pick up those contracts and I hand them to my clients. My clients do the verb. They make a contract. They reach agreement. They make an agreement. The verb is what we do, the making of an agreement, and the noun is the document itself, or the thing that is the contract. Now, do we need to have the noun every time? Do we need to have a written contract in order to have a contract? I'm seeing some shaking of the heads in the no direction. I'm also seeing a lot of averted eyes. So it's amazing how you guys get really good at me not catching your eye really early on. I'm proud of it. We do not, unless the law says we do, need to have a written document in order for a contract to be valid. Now, we already knew from the beginning that there are 4 things that we need under Australian law for there to be a contract. Agreement, which usually involves offer and acceptance, but not always. Consideration, for the moment we're going to call that price. Intention, the parties intended for their agreement to be binding. And certainty, we need to be certain about what the terms of the agreement are, and a range of other things. None of those things are a written document. But in some cases, the law will say, we will not enforce that contract. So the law is not saying there is no contract. It's just saying we will not enforce that contract unless it's in writing. Anybody know or able to give me an example of when the law might do that? Somebody needs to speak louder. I heard 2 voices and... So what did you say? Tenancy or property is a fabulous example. Sorry, what's your name? Billy. Oh, it's on the screen. That's why I don't like giving you the slides in advance. And maybe I should just turn them off. Yeah, land. Anything to do with land. Anybody got any other suggestions? The
example I gave of buying a bottle of water.
Buying a bottle of water, did that need paper? In Tasmania it would have. Oh no, it probably wouldn't have. It's under $20. It depends on what else you bought with it, bizarrely. But actually there might be other laws. For example, you were probably, the organisation that sold you that bottle of water may have been obliged to offer you a tax receipt. That's actually got nothing to do with contract law. That's our law under the tax laws that says you need to offer, if you're going to claim GST or you're going to go in this system, you have to offer a tax receipt. So the laws can come from lots of different places in relation to transactions. Purchasing, entering into a mobile phone contract. Any contract that goes over a 12-month duration, for example, you need to have in writing. If somebody knocks on your door and offers to sell you something, there are laws about putting that contract in writing. There are a range of different things, and we'll talk about the reasons for that as we go. Yes, so you need to tell me your name. I want to learn them.
My name is Holman.
Holman, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. I'm just wondering, is employment contract one of the...
Is employment contract one of the areas? There are a range of different... It depends on the type of employment contract. The short answer is yes. There might not be an individual contract, but there will be an award or a range of rules relating to employment in certain circumstances that will effectively be the terms and conditions of a person's employment. But it is actually possible to employ somebody without a written document for that to be enforceable, because it would be unjust if I were to employ you to fix that air conditioner and you did that and then I didn't pay you and then you sued me, quite rightfully, because we had a contract under which you were employed to do that. Let's say it's ongoing for over 12 months. I'll come back to you in a second. It would be an injustice for me to claim, oh, no written documents, so I'm not bound. Can you see how that would work? Yeah. Sorry, name?
Kevin.
Kevin. Hi, Kevin.
You mentioned something about the written agreement that's beyond 12 months. So, for example, if it's an oral agreement between us and it actually lasted...
Can we get to that? Sorry, it's a good question. Can we get to that in a couple of weeks? Because we will, and we'll get ourselves distracted in this heat otherwise. But if you're really, really desperate about that particular question, have a look at the ACCC website. And I'm not too proud to say we all use Google first. The question, it's not bad to research using Google, it's bad to research using only Google. Start with Google, just never stop there, okay? No, I don't want to do that now yet, or that. We're going to come up. Why do we have a contract law? I'm sorry, I'm really speeding this up now because we're all so ridiculously hot. Any suggestions? What do we have a contract law for, or have laws to deal with contracts for? You need to tell me your name?
Jesse.
Jesse.
To avoid potential conflict between the entities.
To avoid conflicts between entities. Awesome. I'm going to get a few others and we'll pull this together in one piece. Joel. To provide predictability. You had some other words there?
Yeah, but then they kind of trailed off.
They trailed off, so maybe in commercial circumstances.
Yep.
So there's an economic benefit in having stability in the way or consistency in the way that contracts are enforced. So a perceived rule of law benefit. Anything else? Sorry, you need to remind me of your name? Rebecca.
To sort of provide each party with insurance of some sort?
Provide each party with insurance of some sort. So again, coming back to that avoiding the conflict, so having an approach to solving conflict and predictability as to outcome. I saw another hand over here.
I was going to say protecting people's interests.
So this is Jackie, so protecting people's interests. So again, around predictability and clarity, you know what you're getting yourself into. How many of you have a mobile phone? How many of you have a contract for that mobile phone on one or more carriers? Hardly anybody. So you've just got mobile phones that do not connect to the network. If you have a mobile phone that you can make a call with, send a text in, or download porn on, you have a contract with a carrier, okay? Just believe me, trust me on that. Did you get a piece of paper at any point with that, any of you? Some of you did. Some of you, like me, might have bought your contract online. I went to Aldi, got a contract with Telstra. I don't know how it works, but anyway. Who of you read that contract? Oh, people always say they do. I never believe them. I didn't read it. Couldn't negotiate it. I don't care. When am I going to read it? When I have a fight with them, right? When they don't provide me with the service. Then I'll go and have a look and see if I've got anything to get away with. But look, I know, it's only so many hours in the day. But, you know, actually we'll probably read one of those phone contracts as we go at some point. Again, it provides predictability and provides an insurance policy of some sort, in the sense that we have these contracts, but often they're not particularly negotiable. We are accepting a set of terms. But I really want to come back to Joel's point, actually. Ultimately, there is a functional benefit for society, an economic benefit that by having a system of rules for dealing with commercial transactions, now not all transactions or not all agreements are commercial, sometimes agreements might be between family members or friends, but for an agreement to be enforceable, there needs to be some sort of intention for it to be enforced. So intention from the very beginning goes to that stability piece. And one of the reasons why I say you will be reading 200-year-old contracts is because there is a jurisprudential benefit in the law of contract not changing wildly. That if we want stable commercial systems, if we want foreign investment, we need to know what a contract is and what it means. It needs to be dealt with consistently. Contracts are also, going back to the insurance policy that Rebecca mentioned, risk allocation. This is what I do as a commercial lawyer, is I allocate risks between people. Now, I don't make those choices. I just record it and I tell them what we can enforce and what we can't enforce. But at the end of the day, a large part of commercial transaction making is about working out who best bears the risk. So, for example, let's think about, you have a contract with the university. I'm going to get myself in trouble with this analogy, I can see. You have a contract with the university under which the university is going to deliver you some learning opportunities. Who should take the risk relating to health and safety while on university premises? Should that be your risk? Or should it be the university's risk? Clearly, the university is, or the organisation or the party, best able to make decisions about whether we have adequate air conditioning and keeping that maintained. They are in the best position to fix the steps or make sure that there are clear entryways and a working fire alarm. You actually have no control over those things. So if you were to go and, if you took that risk under the contract, you would need to take out a massive amount of insurance or somehow be able to self-insure just in case you fell down the stairs at some point. That is not an appropriate or realistic allocation of risk. But sometimes the devil is in the detail. So often it depends on what it is that the contract is about. Who should take the risk on delivering things on time? Who should take the risk on ensuring that the exchange rate is within certain parameters? We also have to remember that contract law has been around for a very long time in an Anglo-Celtic sense of the development of the law. So whilst I'm sure you will all grapple, particularly when you do jurisprudence, around, where law and justice intersect, if they ever do, there is a moral overlay, a set of assumptions and moral values that go with contract law. Sitting around this idea that if you make a promise, you should keep a promise. I know I'm going to skip that one. I'm going to skip this too, but I'm going to set this as some quote-unquote homework, which I won't check, but there will be a winner. So this is the Kahoot that we were going to do. Instead, I'm going to set this for all of you, including OUA. I will release it later today. And so sometime between now and the end of the week. So, I'm going to give you until the next time we meet. I'll close it Monday fortnight. Or in the afternoon before we come in, and be able to announce the winner at that stage. So this will be one of those Kahoot quizzes. Some of you will have done them before, some of you won't. You will basically, anybody who wants to participate can. If you don't and everybody else participates, we'll probably never know. But if you're the only one who participates, you will be the winner. That will be cool. And so there are 10 or 11, I think there's a funny number of questions, 11 questions about the readings for today to really check your knowledge. One of the reasons I was going to do it in class is my plan is every week is to have somewhere between 5 and 15 questions about the readings that you can do in this way as a little kind of quiz. And so you can get a sense of whether you're on the right track, whether you understood the readings or not. So let's go from there. But the readings this week were about why we have contract laws. And the reason that they might have been confusing is they were giving you sort of 5-paragraph explanations of the life works of a range of different people who spent a lot of time thinking about why we have a contract law as opposed to what a contract might have been. And that has changed over time. The approach that I tend to take is really probably more based around the economic analysis than anything else. But all of them come in at some point. The one that they don't really work so much into the text, but we will keep coming back, it's in the second chapter, it's this idea of contract as a private law as opposed to a public law like tort or criminal law. So the idea that a contract is the opportunity for you and I to have a set of rules that apply only to our transaction and that we are bound by, as opposed to a public law, which is none of us are allowed to go around murdering people without consequences. Okay? So we work from there. So the idea of contract itself, again, it's kind of a funny week, and I hate it that we have topic 1 at the beginning. I just think it'd just blow everybody's mind if I move topic 1 to last. But one of the reasons, it gives me time to talk about the more general stuff and for you to get a sense of how I'm going to teach this class. But really, this is the thing that you'll come back to, these ideas you'll come back to when you have to write a critical analysis piece at the end because you'll be wanting to think about a framework or a jurisprudential framework for thinking about how contract law works. Most of the time, the kinds of problems we'll be doing, the kind of conversation we'll be having is, how is this a contract at all? What would need to happen for it to be a contract? Or how might you create a contract in that particular environment? Or why would you do it that way? So, a couple of little pointers here as I think about them. Legal personality. Legal personality includes bodies corporate. So a human can enter into a contract with another human, provided that, I'm going to oversimplify here, when we get to capacity you'll realise it's not entirely true, but a human who is over the age of 18, who has mental capacity, so they are not insane, drunk, stoned, psychopathic, whatever, can enter into another contract with another human who fits those same capacity criteria. Companies can enter into contracts from day one. In fact, in certain circumstances you'll learn about in company law, you can actually enter into a contract as a company before you're even incorporated. You know what? I'm going to leave these slides to you because now I'm just summarising bits that are in the reading. Couple of things I want to end off with. I am going to send around a survey, if I haven't already done it, to identify the days that will best suit people to do an online tutorial. Secondly, we do not have a class next Monday. The next class, you've got ages before we get stuck into contract law, so get ahead in the reading. Okay, it will not do you any harm to have read about all of the contract elements by the time we meet again, but at the very least, I'll come to you in a second, read about agreement, and we'll spend 2 weeks doing that. I will see what I can do about both this room and the aircon. I might go on strike if there's any risk of it being like this again. I am really sorry for all it's worth. What it's worth, I suspect I suffered as much, if not more, than most of you. I am under the high spotlights here. If you have questions, concerns, comments, frustrations, compliments even, feel free to share them with everybody online in the discussion areas, or come and see me in a moment. Otherwise, I will be overseas from Wednesday until the following Thursday. So if you need to speak to me or contact me, email or WhatsApp will be the best way of doing that.